She spent over 20 years building a life, a marriage she thought was unbreakable. But one fateful night at her daughter's graduation, everything changed. In front of family and friends, he made a public announcement that shattered her world. "I'm leaving you." But Bianca Caldwell had something her husband didn't see coming: strength strategy, and a plan to take back everything she had lost. What followed was a battle not just for assets, but for dignity, for respect, and for a future she was determined to build on her own terms. Watch as she reclaims her life and turns her greatest betrayal into the greatest comeback of all. The moment the words left Gregory's lips, they hung in the air like a thunderclap, silencing everything around us. It was supposed to be a celebration Amelia's graduation dinner, a milestone in our daughter's life, a time for joy, laughter, and pride. Instead, it became the moment Gregory chose to announce in front of 50 people that he was leaving me. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the restaurant turn toward me, but I remained composed. Calm. Too calm, perhaps. My smile, though faint, was more a mask than an expression of relief or anger. It was a mask of control. Gregory stood at the front of the table, champagne glass still raised, as he made his announcement as though it were some casual toast to a new chapter in his life. His words carried the weight of betrayal wrapped in his self-assured tone. "I've decided to start a new life without you." The clinking of silverware ceased instantly. The soft hum of conversation stopped. It was as though time itself had paused, waiting for my reaction, for the tears, for the outrage, for the dramatic exit everyone expected. But I did none of that. I didn't even flinch. Instead, I gave him a quiet nod, acknowledging his honesty. "Congratulations on your honesty." I said, my voice steady, but inside it was anything but calm. "You're free to go, Gregory." Amelia, seated beside me, looked like she had been struck by a blow. Her expression froze, a mixture of confusion and horror. Her eyes flicked between her father and me, searching for any sign of how she should react. But I couldn't worry about her in that moment. This was my moment, and I would not let him steal it from me, not now, not ever again. I turned to her, then my hand resting gently on her shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." I whispered, my voice soft but resolute. "This day is still about your accomplishment." Then I reached into my handbag, my fingers brushing the creamy envelope I had carefully placed there earlier. Without another word, I placed it beside Gregory's plate. His triumphant expression faltered as his gaze shifted to the envelope. "What's this?" he asked, his voice laced with confusion. "Something for you to read later," I replied, keeping my voice steady. I stood up, slowly smoothing my dress as I did. The room felt as if it were holding its breath, all eyes on me, waiting for the outburst they thought was coming. But there was nothing. I walked away, with my head held high, feeling every pair of eyes tracking my every step. My exit wasn't dramatic, it wasn't chaotic, it was quiet, controlled, and it cut through the tension like a knife. The heavy restaurant door swung shut behind me, and as it did, I heard Gregory's voice, no longer confident, but high-pitched and frantic. "Bianca, what the hell is this? What have you done?" I didn't answer him. I kept walking, letting his words fall away behind me. The August heat hit me like a wall as I stepped outside, but I welcomed it. It felt like freedom, the weight of years of emotional restraint lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely. The suffocating grip of the life I had been leading loosened, and I felt the power of the moment surge through me. Behind me, I heard the restaurant door open again, the frantic sound of Gregory's footsteps following me, but I didn't stop. I smiled to myself, a small knowing smile. Gregory had no idea what was coming. I heard his voice crack with desperation as he shouted after me no longer, the confident man who had made his grand announcement just moments before. "Bianca, what is this? What's going on?" I ignored him. The envelope I had handed him wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was the beginning of my revenge. A plan I had been meticulously crafting for months. A plan that would expose his lies, his deceit, and most importantly, his betrayal. He had thought he could walk away from me without consequence, without looking back. But I had been the practical one in our marriage, the one who had always held everything together, while he dreamt big, invested unwisely, and chased fleeting passions. I was the one who saved for Amelia's education, while he squandered money on failed business ventures. I had always played the role of the supportive wife, always behind the scenes, always willing to sacrifice my own aspirations for his. But no more. 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our joint accounts. Small transfers to an account I didn't recognize. As a finance manager, I knew these things were no accident. I didn't confront him right away. Something in me, maybe it was intuition, or maybe the growing distance between us over the last year held me back. Instead, I began to investigate quietly. What I discovered was worse than I imagined. Gregory had been systematically moving funds to a separate account for over a year. He had been spending lavishly, taking Cassandra to expensive restaurants, buying her jewellery, and planning for a beachfront property. All the while, he was telling me that we needed to tighten our belts for retirement. But I had always been the one who understood money. I had always been the one who kept our finances afloat when everything else was falling apart. I knew how to trace the money trail. I knew exactly what he had been doing, and I remembered the prenuptial agreement we had signed 28 years ago, back when I had more family money than he did. The same agreement he had insisted upon, ironically to protect his future earnings. It contained a fidelity clause that would ultimately become his undoing. While Gregory had been busy plotting his escape, I had been quietly preparing mine. I consulted with attorneys. I gathered evidence of his affair, of his financial deception, and I prepared the divorce papers, ensuring everything was timed perfectly. But what Gregory didn't know, what he still didn't understand, was that I had always been 3 steps ahead. I didn't return to the restaurant. I drove straight to our home, the place we had shared for 15 years in the historic district of Augusta. The spacious colonial we had carefully picked out together after years of saving and planning. The house that had once been filled with the warmth of family dinners, birthday parties, and the quiet hum of everyday life. Now it felt like a reminder of everything Gregory had taken for granted. I parked in the driveway, my fingers resting on the steering wheel for a moment. I felt a strange calmness wash over me, as though the decision to act had been made long ago, and I was simply following through. I had already begun to dismantle the life Gregory thought he could leave behind. The door to the house creaked softly as I stepped inside. Everything was as it should be. The family photos on the walls, the antique grandfather clock that had once belonged to my father, the worn leather couch where Gregory and I had spent countless hours dreaming about our future. But everything had changed. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a stage where a play had long since ended, and I was the last one standing, holding the script of what was to come. I went upstairs to our master bedroom. I walked toward the closet, the one we had filled together over the years, with clothes, memories, and promises. I opened the door and froze. Gregory's clothing had already been packed into suitcases, tucked away in the back of the closet, carefully arranged, ready for his departure. I could feel my lips tighten, but I didn't allow the anger to bubble up. Not yet. There would be time for that later. For now, I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was not about him. This was about me. This was about taking back control. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone. My messages buzzed incessantly, but I didn't bother checking them immediately. I knew they were from friends at the restaurant, from Amelia, even from Gregory's sister Diana, who had flown in for the graduation. But my focus was on Amelia. I responded only to her. I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your graduation day. We'll talk tonight. I love you. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep up the charade. Amelia would be angry, upset, but I knew she would understand eventually. She had inherited my practicality, my ability to think clearly even in the face of emotional chaos. And she had also inherited Gregory's charisma, a dangerous combination that had helped her graduate with honours. I didn't want her graduation to be overshadowed by our crumbling marriage. This was supposed to be her moment, her triumph. I would not let Gregory's selfishness ruin that. As I sat there, my phone buzzed again this time, more persistently. It was Gregory. He had tried calling 3 times in the span of a few minutes, his voice growing more frantic with each missed call. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked out of the room and down the stairs, moving through the house with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I opened the drawer in the kitchen where I kept the important papers. The divorce documents were ready. I had spent the last few months working with attorneys, gathering every piece of evidence I needed. Gregory had no idea that I had been preparing for this moment, that I was already planning for the next chapter of my life, while he thought he could get away with his lies. But even as I read through the papers once more, a small part of me felt a pang of regret. Was this really how it was going to end, after everything we had been through? The miscarriages, the hopes we had shared for our future. I closed the drawer with a quiet click. There would be no more second-guessing. Gregory had made his choice. I had to make mine. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke my thoughts. Gregory had arrived. I could hear the slam of the front door before his voice echoed through the house. "Bianca!" he shouted. "Where are you?" I stood still for a moment, letting his voice reverberate through the empty space. There was no anger in my heart, no fury, just a deep, steady calm. I had learned to keep my emotions in check when it mattered. This was one of those times. I walked into the living room just as Gregory stormed through the door, his face flushed with frustration. His eyes were wide, frantic. "What's going on, Bianca? Where are you?" "You need to explain this to me. I don't understand." I held up my hand, cutting him off. "Gregory, you don't need to understand anything. This is over. You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine." His eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to an almost pleading tone. "Bianca, we need to talk about this. We've been through too much. Not anymore." I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You made your choice and I'm making mine. I don't owe you an explanation. The divorce papers are on their way. You'll have your chance to make your case in court." His face paled slightly, the anger in his eyes flickering. "You can't do this to me, Bianca. After everything we've been through, I'm not doing anything to you." I said, my voice steady. "I'm simply taking back what you've taken from me." Gregory opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand again, signalling the end of the conversation. "It's over, Gregory." I turned away from him, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. It was the first step, and there was no turning back. It wasn't until the morning of Amelia's graduation that I decided it was time to act. Gregory had made his announcement the evening before, and now it was time for him to understand the full weight of what he had done. I knew what was coming, and I had planned this moment meticulously, every detail falling into place exactly as I had envisioned. I stood by the window in the living room, staring out at the quiet street. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft glow over the front yard. It felt like the calm before the storm. Behind me, I heard Gregory moving around the house, his footsteps growing closer as he searched for answers. But I was no longer concerned with what he had to say. My mind was clear, my resolve stronger than ever. I reached for the sealed envelope on the kitchen counter, the one I had carefully prepared days ago. Inside, there were more than just the divorce papers. I had added copies of the financial records I'd uncovered, evidence of Gregory's deceit, the secret bank transfers and the lavish expenses he'd been incurring with Cassandra. I had also included a copy of the prenuptial agreement, carefully highlighting the fidelity clause that would ensure Gregory would lose everything. I felt a small, bitter smile tug at my lips. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had insisted on the prenuptial agreement years ago, convinced that it would protect his wealth. Yet here I was, using that same agreement to dismantle the life he had built on lies. It was almost poetic the way everything had come full circle. I could hear Gregory's footsteps approaching the door, his voice still carrying the desperation of someone who knew he was losing control. "Bianca!" He shouted, his voice growing louder. "Come on, we need to talk about this. This isn't how it's supposed to be." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It was time to end the charade. I walked toward the door and opened it slowly, feeling the cool morning air brush against my face. Gregory stood on the doorstep. His face flushed, his eyes wide with confusion and frustration. "Bianca," he began, his voice faltering. "What are you doing? Why are you doing this? We need to fix this. We can fix it. You can't just throw away everything we've built." I stood there for a moment, my heart steady, my emotions kept in check. "Gregory," I said calmly, my voice unwavering, "you're the one who's thrown everything away, not me. I've given you everything I had, and this is how you repay me, with lies, betrayal, and deception." He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand, cutting him off. "There's nothing left to say. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine." I handed him the envelope, my fingers brushing against his for the briefest moment. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the envelope, his confusion mounting. "What's this?" he asked, his voice tight with suspicion. "Something for you to read later," I replied, my tone steady. "You'll find everything you need inside, the truth you've been hiding from me." Gregory's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. His eyes flicked between me and the paper, but he didn't open it yet. Instead, he stared at me, a flicker of panic crossing his face. "Bianca, I don't understand. We can still fix this. You can't just walk away. You fix it." I interrupted, my voice growing sharper. "How? By continuing to lie to me, by stealing from our future. No, Gregory. This is how it ends. Not on your terms, but on mine." I stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Please, go ahead. Read it. It's everything you deserve to know." He hesitated, the weight of the situation sinking in. I could see the flicker of realization in his eyes as he grasped the full extent of what I was doing. His smugness, the arrogance that had once defined him, was slipping away piece by piece. "I'm done, Gregory," I said softly, the finality of my words hanging in the air. "This marriage, this life we built, it's over, and there's nothing you can do to change it." His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing in fury. "You're making a huge mistake," he spat. "You think you're winning, but you're not. You'll regret this." But I didn't regret it, not for a second. I turned my back on him and walked down the hallway, my heart pounding, but my mind clear. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. From the corner of my eye, I saw Gregory standing frozen in the doorway, the envelope still clenched in his hand. But it was too late for him to change his mind. The door swung shut behind me with a finality that echoed through the house. As I stepped outside, the cool morning air hit me like a wave, but I welcomed it. I had been suffocating for so long in this marriage, but now, for the first time in years, I could breathe. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Everything I had been waiting for was finally within reach. The house was empty without Gregory, and I found a strange sense of peace in the silence. I had expected the usual chaos, the shouting, the pleading, but there was nothing. No frantic phone calls, no desperate attempts to fix things. He hadn't come after me, not yet. And for the first time, I wondered if he even knew how to fight for what he wanted, or if he had simply expected me to do all the work in this marriage as I had always done. I sat down in the living room, my fingers tracing the edges of the envelope I had handed him. I could feel the weight of it, the weight of everything it represented. It was more than just papers. It was the culmination of months of careful planning, of watching, of waiting. I had been patient, methodical, like a surgeon preparing for the final incision. Gregory had played his hand, and now it was time for me to play mine. I turned on the television, but it felt like background noise, a blur I could barely focus on. My mind kept drifting back to Amelia, who had yet to text me back. I knew she would be hurt, angry even, but I couldn't afford to let that stop me. The more I thought about it, the more I realised how much I had kept from her over the years, how much I had hidden to protect her, to keep her focused on her future while mine crumbled behind the scenes. But not anymore. I sent her a message reminding her that I was fine. "I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry," I typed, hoping that she would understand. "We'll talk tonight. I love you." But even as I hit send, I felt a pang of guilt. She didn't deserve any of this. She didn't deserve to see her parents torn apart like this, not on the day she had worked so hard, for not when the world was supposed to be celebrating her accomplishments. It wasn't long before my phone buzzed with another message, this time from Gregory. "Bianca, we need to talk. We need to fix this. You can't just leave things like this." I stared at the message for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keys. A part of me wanted to respond to explain myself, but I knew better than that. There was nothing left to fix. There was no more negotiating. My decision had been made. I put my phone down and took a deep breath. I needed to stay focused. I needed to stay in control. I spent the rest of the day in the quiet of our home, moving through the motions of normalcy, washing the dishes, folding laundry, tidying up the rooms that had once been filled with laughter and life. It was a strange sort of peace, knowing that the world as I had known it was ending, but at the same time feeling the stirrings of something new, something all my own. Later that afternoon, I received a call from Diana Gregory's sister. I had been expecting it. She had always been the one who saw things more clearly than anyone else in the family. She wasn't surprised by Gregory's behaviour, but she was concerned for me. "Bianca, are you okay?" Diana asked, her voice soft with worry. I smiled to myself. Diana had been the one constant in my life when things felt like they were falling apart. "I'm fine, Diana, really. I just need some time to process everything." "You're not alone in this," she said. "You have me and you have Amelia. Don't forget that." "I won't," I replied. I'm just tired, Diana. Tired of being the one who holds everything together while he does whatever he wants. This time, I'm the one who's going to get what's rightfully mine." I could hear her pause on the other end of the line. "What are you going to do? Bianca, I know you've been planning something, but what now?" I didn't have to explain. Diana already knew. She had seen enough of Gregory's antics over the years to understand what had led me to this point. She didn't need the full story. "I'm going to make sure he feels the consequences of his actions. He thought he could walk away without any repercussions, but I've made sure that won't happen. Everything's in motion now. He can't undo what's been done." Diana's voice softened. "You're strong, Bianca. I know you'll get through this." The conversation ended, but her words stayed with me. They echoed in my mind like a quiet reminder of what I had to do. I wasn't just doing this for myself. I was doing it for Amelia too. She deserved more than the lies and the betrayal that had defined her father's actions. I glanced at the clock. The time was coming. Gregory would be home soon and I would have to face him. But not yet. I needed to be sure everything was set. The documents were ready, the evidence was there, and I was about to deliver the final blow. As I stood up and walked to the kitchen, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Gregory was about to realise something he hadn't considered, that while he had spent the last year planning his escape, I had been planning my own future. A future that would no longer be tied to him. A future that would be entirely mine. The door slammed behind me as I stepped back into the house, the faintest echo of its weight hanging in the air. Gregory was home. I had known he would be, but the reality of it hit differently when I saw him standing in the hallway. His posture tense, his eyes searching for an explanation that wasn't coming. His usual confidence had cracked. There was no longer the smug assurance that he could talk his way out of anything. Instead, There was an unmistakable flicker of panic in his eyes, something he had never shown before, not even when he'd lost one of his business ventures or made some reckless financial decision. "Bianca," he called, his voice tentative. "We need to talk." I remained still for a moment, collecting myself. He had spent so long being the one in control, the one with all the power, the one who made the decisions. But not anymore. That power had shifted. Turning slowly, I met his gaze. "Talk," I repeated. "About what, Gregory? About how you've spent the last year lying to me, stealing from me, and planning your escape." His face faltered slightly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said quickly, taking a step toward me. "I made a mistake. We've been through too much. We can work this out. We can fix this." I let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. "Fix it? How exactly do you think you can just say you made a mistake and that everything will go back to normal? You've destroyed everything, Gregory. Everything." He stepped closer, as though that might somehow bring him closer to winning me back. "I know I've hurt you," he said, his voice almost pleading now. "But we've had 28 years together. Don't you think we can find a way to make this work?" I shook my head, my voice unwavering. "You chose her, Gregory. You chose to betray me. You chose to humiliate me in front of our friends, our daughter. And now you're asking me to fix it. No, this is not something you can fix. Not this time." His face flushed, the anger beginning to creep back into his expression. "You're being unreasonable. I interrupted him, holding up the envelope I had given him the night before. He glanced down at it, then back up at me, confusion still evident in his eyes. "What is this?" he asked, his voice sharp, now trying to regain control. "Something for you to read later," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's everything you need to understand the mess you've made. The money, the lies, the affair, it's all in there." Gregory's eyes narrowed, the panic slowly shifting to defensiveness. "You don't get to just throw this in my face. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut him off, my voice rising with the weight of everything I had been holding back. "I understand that while I worked my arse off to support this family, you were off living your little fantasy with Cassandra. I understand that while I was keeping things together, you were planning your exit. Well, now you get to deal with the consequences." Gregory's face twisted, his mouth opening and closing as if he was searching for the right words. But nothing came out. The facade had cracked, and the man who had always controlled the narrative was suddenly speechless. It was a small victory, but one I savoured. I stepped closer to him, not out of any desire for confrontation, but because it felt right. "I was there for you, Gregory, every step of the way. I put my dreams on hold for you. I sacrificed everything for this family. And you took it all for granted. You took me for granted." His hands were trembling now. "I never meant for things to get this bad," he said, his voice strained. I never meant to hurt you." I looked him square in the eyes, steadying myself, knowing that I was about to make the hardest decision of all. "You didn't just hurt me, Gregory. You destroyed everything I believed in. You destroyed us. And now it's time to face the music." I took a deep breath, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. "This is it. There's no going back. We're done." I turned away from him, then moving toward the door. I knew the finality of that moment would sting, but it had to be said. There was no more room for uncertainty in this equation. Gregory had made his choice, and now I was making mine. I glanced back at him one last time, his face pale, his mouth agape in disbelief. "I'll be at Diana's tonight. You've got until tomorrow evening to take your things. After that, the locks will be changed." I didn't wait for his reply. I knew he wouldn't have one. He was too caught up in his own desperation to understand what was happening, what was about to happen. As I walked out of the house, I felt the familiar weight of the world slip from my shoulders. For so long, I had carried the burden of our family's future, of keeping everything together. But now, the load was light. It was his turn to carry the consequences. Outside, the cool air hit me like a wave, but it was refreshing. It was the first time I had felt the freedom of walking away from him, from everything he had put me through. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was leaving. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The house was still there, still standing. But everything inside was about to change. The courtroom felt cold and impersonal, a stark contrast to the warmth of the home I had spent years building with Gregory. It had been a few weeks since I had left, since I had delivered the final blow that had torn our lives apart. Now it was time for the real reckoning. The legal battle. I sat beside my attorney, Philip Anderson, as we waited for the proceedings to begin. I tried to steady my nerves, but there was a small part of me that still felt the weight of everything. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't about the house or the cars or the vacation properties. It was about dignity. It was about the years of sacrifice, the years of being the one who held everything together while he chased his fantasies. Across from me, Gregory sat with his newly hired attorney, a young associate who clearly didn't have the experience to navigate this kind of case. It was almost laughable how little he seemed to know about what was coming. Gregory, for all his bluster, had made a grave mistake in rushing into this situation without considering the long-term consequences. He had underestimated me, and now it was time for him to learn. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense attitude, entered the room, and the air seemed to tighten. She didn't waste any time. Mr. Caldwell. She began looking over her glasses at Gregory's attorney. Do you contest the validity of the prenuptial agreement? The attorney cleared his throat, looking nervous. Your Honour, we believe the agreement has expired due to the length of the marriage and the duration of the separation. Section 18 clearly states that the term of the agreement expires with the dissolution of the marriage as indicated in the legal documents. The judge didn't even flinch as she flipped through the papers. Section 18, she read aloud, states no such thing. There is no expiration date listed here. Are you certain about your claim? Gregory's attorney stammered, glancing at Gregory, who sat tensely beside him, clearly realising that things were not going as planned. Your Honour. The attorney continued, though he didn't sound quite as sure of himself now. We believe the agreement was meant to cover only certain specific circumstances. The judge didn't respond immediately. Instead, she began reviewing the financial records Philip had presented evidence of Gregory's hidden transfers, his lavish spending on Cassandra, and the multiple purchases that were made in preparation for his new life with her. It was all there in black and white. I had been meticulous in gathering every shred of evidence. After a long pause, the judge finally spoke. The prenuptial agreement remains valid. Section 12, the fidelity clause, is still in effect, and any attempt to bypass it will not be tolerated. Furthermore, the evidence of systematic financial concealment and betrayal is enough to support the freeze on the joint accounts. Gregory's face drained of colour as he sat there, the full weight of the judge's words sinking in. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The judge didn't even look up from the papers she was reviewing as she spoke again, her voice calm but firm. Until full financial discovery has been completed, the joint accounts will remain frozen. Mr. Caldwell's personal account will remain accessible for living expenses, but any attempts to transfer funds out of the frozen assets will be flagged. The family home remains in the possession of Mrs. Caldwell, as stipulated in the prenuptial agreement. Gregory's eyes widened in shock as the reality of the situation hit him. You can't do this, he said, his voice strained. I built this life. The judge's eyes locked on him with an intensity that shut him down instantly. Mr. Caldwell, she said, her tone unyielding, you signed this agreement and you chose to break its terms. The consequences are now yours to bear. We will reconvene in 30 days for the full hearing after discovery is complete. I could hear Gregory's breath hitch as he slumped slightly in his chair. He had tried to act confident in front of everyone, tried to hold on to his image as the successful businessman who had it all together. but now it was all unraveling. His lies, his deceit, everything he had worked so hard to hide had finally come to light. The judge gave her final ruling and left the room. And as we all stood to leave, I could feel Gregory's eyes on me full of disbelief and a growing sense of panic. "Bianca," he called as I gathered my things, his voice sounding almost desperate now. "Please, we need to talk. We can still fix this. I never meant for things to get this bad." I turned slowly to face him, my heart steady but my gaze unwavering. "Gregory, there's nothing left to fix. You made your choice and I'm making mine. This is over." He opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. "You need to stop pretending you didn't know exactly what you were doing. You didn't care about me or our family. You cared about yourself and your own desires. Now you're going to face the consequences of your actions." I turned and walked away, not looking back. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt the full weight of the moment settle over me. But it wasn't sadness I felt. It was relief. The battle wasn't over yet, but I was closer to reclaiming everything he had tried to take from me. The weeks that followed the courtroom hearing were a blur of phone calls, legal paperwork, and growing tensions. Gregory's world was collapsing in on itself, and I could almost feel the ripple effect of his panic from the other side of the city. His business ventures, which had once seemed so promising, were now faltering without the steady financial support I had always provided. The beachfront property he had dreamed of purchasing with Cassandra was no longer on the table, and the luxury cars he had planned to buy were suddenly too expensive for him to afford. I had known that the financial freeze would have an immediate impact, but it was clear now how far-reaching the consequences were. Gregory's carefully crafted image as a successful entrepreneur was crumbling bit by bit, and I could almost taste the satisfaction of knowing he was finally feeling the weight of the decisions he had made. But even as I felt the power shift, there was something else stirring inside me, a mix of anger, grief, and an aching sense of loss. For all his faults, Gregory had been my partner for nearly 3 decades. He had been the father of our daughter. And though his betrayal had shattered everything I thought I knew about our life, I couldn't deny the lingering sadness I felt. I focused on the small things, on moving forward, on rebuilding my own life one piece at a time. I spent more time at the office I had rented, transforming it into the space I had always dreamed of. Caldwell Financial Transitions. It had been a long time coming, but now it was real. I was no longer just Gregory's wife, no longer just Amelia's mother. I was Bianca Caldwell, a businesswoman in her own right with a purpose and a future all her own. I had always dreamed of running my own consultancy, helping women navigate financial transitions, whether through divorce, career changes, or other major life shifts. And now I was doing it, one step at a time. Amelia came to visit one evening after work, her face tight with the stress of everything that had been happening. I could see the anger in her eyes, but it was tinged with something else, something I hadn't expected. A deep sense of betrayal. "I can't believe what he's done," she said, sitting down beside me on the worn leather couch in my new office. "He ruined everything. He's ruined you, Mom." I placed my hand on hers, squeezing it gently. "He didn't ruin me, Amelia. He tried to, but he failed. He underestimated me. And I'm going to make sure he knows it." She leaned back against the couch, her eyes tired. I can't believe he did this to us, to you." "I know," I said softly, "but I need you to understand something. This is not about us being victims. This is about us taking control of our own futures. We don't need him to succeed. We never did." Amelia looked at me, her expression softening. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. I'm proud of the woman you are. You've always been strong. But I never realized how much you were holding in, how much you were sacrificing for all of us." I smiled, feeling a pang of emotion in my chest. "I did what I thought was best for our family, but now I'm doing what's best for me, for both of us. She nodded, her eyes still reflecting the confusion and hurt of the past few weeks. I know you've always been there for me, and I'm here for you too. But it's hard, Mum. It's hard to see him throw everything away. To see him with her. It's just, I don't even know who he is anymore. I pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. I know, sweetheart, I know, but we'll get through this, together. We're stronger than we've ever been. As Amelia stayed with me that night, we talked about everything, about the past, about the future. We talked about the anger we both felt, the uncertainty of what would happen next, and the hope that one day we would both find peace with all of it. The next few days were a whirlwind. Gregory, desperate to regain some semblance of control, reached out to me multiple times. He begged me to reconsider, to meet him to talk. But I didn't need to meet him. I didn't need to hear his pleas. I had already made my decision. One morning, I received a text from Diana. "Have you heard the latest?" She asked, her tone tinged with amusement. I raised an eyebrow, my curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Cassandra moved out. "Already?" I blinked, my heart skipping a beat. "Already?" Apparently, she figured out that Gregory's business isn't doing as well as he claimed. All those grand promises he made to her about the future gone. The beachfront property, the luxury lifestyle. None of it's real. She's out. I couldn't help but laugh, a dark chuckle that echoed in the quiet room. "The irony is delicious," Diana went on. She told her friend Jennifer that she didn't sign up for a man with financial problems. Now she's looking for someone else. The whole thing's unraveling, and Gregory's too blinded by his own ego to see it. As the days passed, Gregory's world continued to fall apart. His business was on the brink of collapse. His relationships crumbling, and his carefully constructed facade of success was in tatters. All his talk of dreams and ambition had amounted to nothing, and it was all coming down faster than he could have ever imagined. As the weeks turned into months, I could feel the momentum building. The legal battle with Gregory was far from over, but the hardest part had already passed. He was unraveling, and I was only growing stronger. Caldwell. Financial Transitions was thriving. What started as a small office with just a few clients had expanded rapidly. Word had spread, and the need for my expertise had never been greater. Women in transition, whether through divorce, career changes, or unexpected life events, found comfort and guidance in my services. I had always wanted to help women take control of their financial futures, and now I was doing just that. The satisfaction I felt was something I hadn't experienced in years. For the first time in ages, I felt truly fulfilled. I was no longer just Gregory's wife or Amelia's mother. I was Bianca Caldwell, a woman with her own identity, her own purpose. And that felt like freedom. Amelia had settled into her new job in Charleston, and though it was hard to see her go, I was proud of the woman she was becoming. We talked regularly, sometimes about the mundane things, sometimes about the more complicated matters, the emotions we were both navigating in the wake of our family's collapse. She too was healing slowly but surely, but then something unexpected happened. One evening, as I was wrapping up a client meeting in my office, the door opened and Diana stepped inside. She had a look on her face I couldn't quite read, a mix of amusement and something else. "Bianca, you're never going to believe this," she said, walking in and closing the door behind her. "What now?" I asked, leaning back in my chair, already bracing for some new development in the mess that had become our lives. "Diana, just tell me," I said, my curiosity piqued. I hadn't heard from Gregory in days, and I was more than ready to move on with my life without any more interruptions. Diana and I had a conversation. She started, her tone playful, yet with a tinge of seriousness. "And I think you might like to know what's happening in Gregory's life now." I raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "You know how things were falling apart for him, right?" she said, leaning against the edge of my desk, clearly enjoying the moment. "Well, they've completely crumbled. His business is on the brink of bankruptcy, and Cassandra, well, she's gone." I couldn't suppress a small smile. "Gone? I thought she'd be with him forever." Diana shrugged, a wry smile playing on her lips. Apparently, she didn't sign up for a man whose business is failing. She's already moved on to someone else. Someone who can give her what she wanted, money, security, a future. I sat back in my chair, letting the weight of Diana's words settle in. That's a shocker. I honestly didn't expect her to bail so quickly. Diana chuckled. Well, she didn't exactly stick around when she found out the truth. You know, the truth, he didn't want to tell her. He was living in a fantasy, and now he's facing the reality. The satisfaction I felt from hearing this news was more than just a relief, it was validation. I had known all along that Gregory's facade would crack eventually, and now it was crumbling faster than anyone had expected. Cassandra had fallen for the same lies I had believing in the image Gregory had created, only to find out it was all smoke and mirrors. Is he alone now? I asked, a tinge of curiosity in my voice. Diana shook her head. Not exactly. He's still got his business, though it's barely afloat. But there's no way he'll be able to recover from this. He doesn't have the support he had before, and I think deep down he knows it's over. I took a deep breath, allowing myself a moment of reflection. This wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about closure. It was about finally seeing Gregory face the consequences of his actions, not just for what he had done to me, but for the way he had treated everyone who had ever trusted him. Well, I'm glad to hear it, I said, finally allowing myself a small, contented smile. He deserves everything he's getting. Diana gave me a knowing look. You've been so calm through all of this, Bianca. I'm proud of you. And I know Amelia is too. I nodded, but my mind was already moving forward. Gregory's downfall was just a chapter in the story of my life, one that was coming to a close. I had been consumed by him for so long, but now I was free. Free to create my own future. Free to be the woman I had always known I could be. As the months passed, my consultancy continued to grow, and I found myself expanding into new areas of financial consulting. I began offering workshops for women, teaching them how to secure their futures financially, to take control of their assets, and to never let anyone else define their worth. It was deeply fulfilling to see the women who came to me, empowered not just by their finances, but by the confidence that came from knowing they were in control of their own lives. Amelia called me one evening, her voice brimming with pride. "Mum, I'm so proud of you," she said. "I've never seen you this happy. This is what you were always meant to do." I smiled, the words filling me with warmth. "Thank you, sweetheart. But this isn't just about me. It's about us. We're stronger than we've ever been." As I sat in my office late one night reviewing financial plans for the next workshop, I glanced at the framed photo of Amelia and me on the desk. It was a picture of us from years ago, before everything changed. Back then, I had been the woman who quietly supported her family, never asking for anything in return. But now, I was the woman who had rebuilt her life from the ground up. I had become someone new, and the future, for the first time in a long time, felt completely mine. The day of the final divorce hearing arrived with a strange sense of finality. The courtroom was quieter than usual, as if the air itself knew what was about to unfold. It had been months since Gregory and I had first sat across from each other, yet now it felt as though all the tension, all the emotions that had been simmering for so long were about to come to a head. Philip and I entered the courtroom together, the weight of the documents we'd filed. Everything from the financial records to the prenuptial agreement felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't about the house or the retirement accounts or the vacation properties. It was about the final step in reclaiming what had been mine all along. Gregory was already there, sitting with his attorney. His face was drawn, the once confident man, now looking worn, weary. His business was failing, his personal life was in shambles, and now his financial world was about to collapse as well. He looked up as we entered, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than arrogance in his eyes, regret. Or maybe it was fear. The judge entered and the room grew still. She was an older woman, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, with a reputation for fairness. She wasn't here to entertain any dramatic pleas or tearful speeches. She was here to do one thing: deliver justice. We've reviewed the details of this case. The judge began, her voice firm and steady. The prenuptial agreement is valid. The financial misdeeds have been documented, and the evidence of Mr. Caldwell's affair and financial concealment is indisputable. The court will proceed with the division of assets as stipulated in the agreement, and Mr. Caldwell will be held accountable for his actions. I felt a strange mix of emotions as the judge spoke. There was relief, certainly relief that this was finally ending, but there was also something else, a quiet, steady sense of pride. Gregory had thought he could outsmart me, that he could leave me with nothing, that his charm and charisma would somehow win the day. But he had underestimated me, and now the tables had turned. Gregory's attorney tried to argue a few points, claiming that some of the evidence was circumstantial, or that the prenuptial agreement had expired. But the judge was unyielding, her gaze fixed on Gregory as she addressed him directly. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice unwavering, "you signed this agreement knowing full well what it entailed. Your actions since the signing of that document have only reinforced its validity. The court has ruled. Mrs. Caldwell will retain the family home as well as the majority of the joint assets. The transfer of assets to your personal account will be subject to further scrutiny." Gregory's face paled and his hands clenched in front of him. He had once been so sure of himself, so confident in his ability to charm and manipulate his way out of any situation. But now, in front of the court, he was just another man who had made the mistake of thinking he could escape the consequences of his actions. I didn't think it would come to this," he muttered, his voice barely audible, the weight of his words heavy in the room. I thought I could fix it." I looked at him, then finally letting myself feel the full force of everything I had been holding in for months. There was no anger in me now, no hatred, just a quiet, resolute acceptance. "You made your choice, Gregory," I said softly, "and now you'll have to live with it." The judge didn't waste any more time. "The court will reconvene in 30 days for the final division of assets after further discovery is completed," she declared, bringing the session to a close. In the meantime, the order to freeze the joint accounts remains in effect. As we gathered our things, I glanced over at Gregory once more. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at the floor, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and disbelief. But there was no more fight left in him. His carefully crafted illusion of success had shattered, and now he was facing the reality of his choices. The drive home was quiet. Philip and I exchanged a few words, but most of the ride was spent in comfortable silence. It wasn't over yet, but it was a significant step forward. When I walked through the door of my office that evening, I paused for a moment. The space had changed since I first moved in. The furniture had been rearranged, new clients had come and gone, and my sense of purpose had grown clearer with each passing day. This was my space now, my future. I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo of Amelia and me. We were standing on the beach, both of us laughing at something silly, the kind of laughter that felt light and free. I had been that woman, the one who had put everything on hold for the sake of the family. And now I was a different woman, a stronger one who had rediscovered herself in the midst of the pain and the chaos. My phone buzzed on the desk and I picked it up. It was Amelia, her name flashing across the screen. I smiled as I answered. "Hey, sweetie," I said, my voice warm. "How's everything going? I just wanted to tell you." Amelia said, her voice bright and filled with emotion. "I'm so proud of you. You've done what I never thought you could. You've built something for yourself. You've rebuilt us." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "You've been my strength too, you know." "Yeah, but you've always been the strong one," she replied with a laugh. "Just promise me one thing, Mom." "Anything," I said, my heart swelling. "Don't ever forget how amazing you are," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "You're a survivor, you're a fighter, and I'll always be here with you. As I hung up the phone, I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. I wasn't the woman I had been before. I had changed, and I was stronger for it. 6 months had passed since the final hearing. The months had been filled with paperwork court dates and the quiet unravelling of Gregory's world. His business, once a symbol of his ambition, was now barely hanging on, and Cassandra, the woman he had left me for, had disappeared from the scene altogether. It seemed as though the universe had a way of revealing the truth, and Gregory had been caught in its web. But for me, these months had been transformative. I had emerged from the ashes of my marriage stronger, more resilient and more confident than I had ever been. The pain of the past had given way to a future I was now building with my own hands. Caldwell Financial Transitions was thriving beyond my expectations. What began as a small consultancy had turned into a full-fledged business. I had expanded my services, offering workshops and one-on-one sessions for women navigating major life transitions. I was helping them secure their financial futures, just as I had done for myself. Every day, I received messages from women thanking me for guiding them through their own personal storms, reminding me that I was doing exactly what I had always been meant to do. The office had grown as well. I had moved from the small, cramped space I had first rented into a larger, more modern office in the heart of the city. It felt surreal to walk in each day and see my name on the door, a constant reminder of how far I had come. But it wasn't just the business that had flourished. My personal life had evolved too. I had reconnected with parts of myself I had forgotten existed. I took weekends off to travel, something I hadn't done in years. I spent time with friends, laughing and sharing stories, experiences that were once rare in my life. Most importantly, I had finally learned how to put myself first, something I had never allowed myself to do before. I hadn't seen Gregory since the divorce was finalised. He had tried reaching out a few times, but I never responded. There was no need. I had nothing left to say to him. The Gregory I had once known was long gone, replaced by a man who was now facing the consequences of his own choices. One afternoon, as I was finishing up a meeting with a new client, I received a text from Amelia. She had been working in Charleston for a few months, and I missed her. Her messages always brightened my day. Mom. The text read, "I'm coming to visit this weekend. I've got something I want to talk to you about." I paused for a moment, a mix of curiosity and concern crossing my mind. Amelia and I had always been open with each other, but there were times when she kept things to herself, especially if they were difficult. I had learned not to push her too hard, letting her come to me when she was ready. I replied quickly, "I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to see you." When Amelia arrived on Saturday, she was quiet at first, her eyes scanning the apartment, as if something weighed heavily on her mind. I could see the tension in her posture, the way she carried herself. It wasn't like her to be this reserved. We sat down on the couch, and she took a deep breath before speaking. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, about Dad, about us, about you." She began, her voice trembling slightly. I reached out and placed my hand on hers, giving her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to worry about me, sweetheart. I'm okay. We're okay." She shook her head, her eyes filling with emotion. "It's not just about that. It's about what you've done, what you've built. I've watched you transform over the past few months, and it's been amazing. But there's something else I need to tell you." My heart raced a little as I waited for her to continue. "What is it, honey?" Amelia hesitated, as if trying to find the right words. "I've been offered a position with a company in New York. They want me to head their marketing department. It's a huge opportunity, and I don't want to let it go." My heart swelled with pride for her. Amelia had always been driven, always so dedicated to her goals. This was a big step for her, and I knew she had worked hard for it. "That's incredible, sweetheart," I said, my voice filled with pride. "You've earned this. I'm so proud of you." She smiled, but the uncertainty was still there in her eyes. "But I'm scared, Mum. I don't want to leave you. We've been through so much together. I don't want to leave you behind." I squeezed her hand gently. "Amelia, you are my heart. You always will be. but you need to do what's best for you. This is your time to spread your wings to go after your dreams. I'll always be here for you no matter what. Tears welled up in her eyes and I could see the conflict in her expression. I don't know if I can do it without you. You don't have to do it alone, I said softly. You'll always have me by your side no matter where you are. I believe in you. You're ready for this. You've always been ready. Amelia threw her arms around me and we held each other tightly. For the first time in months, I realized how far we had come. From the pain, from the uncertainty, we had both emerged stronger and more capable. The future was no longer a question mark, it was an opportunity, an exciting new beginning. As she left later that evening to pack for her move to New York, I stood by the door watching her go. It was bittersweet, but I knew this was what she needed. This was her journey just as mine had been. As I closed the door behind me, I realized that this was the beginning of something new, not just for Amelia, but for me as well. I had reclaimed my life. I had found myself again, and in doing so, I had created something better than I had ever imagined. I was no longer defined by Gregory or by the life I thought I had to live. I was Bianca Caldwell, and I was ready for whatever came next.